So thanks for coming along and joining us today. I'm talking about, can we get the slides up? We're talking about the human side of work today, and really this idea of humans versus machines in the workplace. And looking at the idea of what are some of the good things that we as humans bring to work, what are some of the bad things that we bring to work, and what are we doing with machines to overcome some of these ideas. Now, as humans, there are a number of issues that we do bring into the office and into work, and they're not intentional things that cause us issues. They're things that happen just simply through human nature. And we've been working with technology for many years now to improve this and evolve, and we continue to do that through machines and technology. Now, certainly some of the issues that we bring to the table through simply needing humans in the workplace are cost. It's very expensive to hire human beings. Humans like to take annual leave, we like to take holidays and spend time with our family and friends. We need to refresh. Gonna catch up now. It's a good thing I know these slides well. So we need to take this time off to spend time to recharge and refresh. We simply can't work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Machines can do that. We also, as certainly one of the key issues with humans, have labour laws right across the globe that we have to deal with in different countries. When we hire machines to automate and do this work, we don't have to deal with those issues. So given the cost issue, it's no wonder that businesses are continuing to look at bringing machines and automation into recruitment processes, into workplace practices, because it makes business sense. Now, some of the other issues we bring to the table are bias. We make decisions based on a whole variety of factors, and throughout our lives there's a lot of things that tie together and influence the decisions we make. There's a whole range of bias, and as far as workplaces go, we know it exists. In HR, we spend a lot of time trying to teach people how to remove this from their decisions. Now, we have systematic bias. Now, this is where we're looking at bias based on age, gender, ethnicity, and a variety of other factors. But we've seen research coming out now that indicates there's more types of systematic bias starting to take place. In a recent research through project management recruitment, they found that project managers being hired typically were taller than other people, even though they had no influence on the role. It was just the bias that was taking place in the decision maker's mind. We've also got affinity bias. This is a lot more subtle in terms of influencing our decisions, and it's often misaligned with cultural fit, where we start making decisions based on similar experiences to our own. We start looking at people's external hobbies and extracurricular activities and influencing our decision. There was a law firm that they did quite a bit of research on, and they found that the law firm was hiring people who had what we would call the elite activities, like classical music and sailing, as opposed to the more traditional things like athletics. And that was because that was the experience that all of the existing people had. So while we do tie this into cultural fit quite often, it's not necessarily a good thing because it goes against the diversity that we're often trying to build into our workplaces to promote innovation and different ideas and different experiences. And certainly one of my favorite is this idea of the wrong side of the bed. Everyone's probably heard this saying before, got out of the wrong side of the bed and in a bit of a grumpy mood. There's a lot of things that can affect our state of mind. Certainly not having your coffee in the morning, not getting enough sleep, having a bad commute on the way to work. These can all influence our experiences throughout the day and lead us to create unfair decisions in our experience. There was a really interesting case where we tested this in Israel, or the research came out, and they looked at parole hearings. So they had a range of judges who do parole hearings every day, very experienced judges. And they looked at the decisions they made. People whose parole hearing was first thing in the morning or just after lunch, 2/3 of them received parole. People who had their parole hearing just before lunch or just before the end of the day, virtually none of them received parole. And there was no other systematic bias in the decisions or identifiable in the people that were up for parole. And it was really just identified back to this state of mind that the judges were in at the time. Now, there's a lot of ways that we come up with to overcome these biases and these ideas. Certainly, things like blind recruitment and evaluation, where we try to remove any information from the equation that leads to bias. Recruiting for orchestras is one of the prime examples I can think of here. They used to recruit for orchestras by sitting there and watching them play, and then they put a sheet up between the musician and the assessors, and they didn't tell them who was playing. All they could judge off was the music and not the person. And it had a pretty strong impact. They suddenly had a lot more female musicians playing in major orchestras across the globe. We also see things like structured interviews brought into recruitment processes, particularly in government organisations. So we work to a very standard set of questions and materials, but it's very time-consuming to remove identifiable information from resumes. It's very difficult to do as business as usual. And this happens right throughout different business ideas. Structured interviews are great, but we still easily let our state of mind and biases come into the equation. It's not a foolproof scenario. So this is where we start to see machines coming into the equation and trying to help us out. Now, certainly, I know it's come up as some of the hot topics this morning with machine learning. I know we've got a number of businesses out here talking to you today that are all machine learning businesses. And machine learning is really the hot topic in terms of trying to help us improve HR and improve workplaces today. And at its simplest, I think the easiest way to talk about it is the idea that machine learning is machines that teach themselves. They're not specifically programmed by a software engineer in the same way that traditional software works. And it's used quite a lot throughout our lives. We've probably all experienced some system that was using machine learning today. We have these systems telling us how much our house is worth and what our house is likely to be worth into the future. Working as part of a global team, I'm often using language translation tools. Something like Google Translate, which has been being developed over the years and is working a lot smoother now than it used to. And one that we've probably all experienced is product recommendations. You go onto Amazon and you buy something, it starts making recommendations for other products that you might be interested, all being built based on the big data that the machine is learning from. In hiring and human resources, we're seeing this quite a lot as well. I mean, we've got the vendors out here today that are talking about this. We've had people in the room talking about this. We often see it taking place at the top end of the funnel, where we're trying to identify, source, screen, and quickly review candidates and open up more strategic activities for our people to take advantage of their extra time. So there's a lot of places this is being done. Sourcing, screening, testing, assessments, all have got different vendors working on machine learning solutions. But I guess the question then is, how much can we trust the machines that we're asking to do our jobs? We obviously, as humans, one of the great advantages, and it's something that we do in HR quite a lot, is we can identify when there are potential issues. We can identify that a bias exists, and we can take actions to overcome that. With algorithms, they're obviously not sentient, they're not able to make these decisions themselves. And we do run into a number of issues. Everyone's obviously, most people have probably bought something from Amazon over the time. And a lot of people would have experienced this idea of, I don't understand why it's making this recommendation to me. And this comes down to garbage in, garbage out. We've all heard that saying. And this is where the bias from humanity comes into play and can potentially influence the machines we're trying to influence to bring and solve these problems. Most people have probably used Facebook. Facebook has got the facial recognition on their photos, and we helped train that. We all went in and tagged our photos for years, and then they started telling us when we're in a photo. But there has been some pretty big stories around facial recognition not working. In New Zealand just last week, there was an issue where someone uploaded their photo and it kept telling them their eyes were closed, even though it wasn't. And it was because this machine hadn't identified that person's facial structure previously. In MIT, there was a big issue with facial recognition software they were using with invisible people. And it was down to a simple issue of the software hadn't been trained using a diverse data set. It had been trained using only white faces. So when a person of color sat down, it didn't recognize that they were there. And this leads us into a bit of a lack of transparency. Because the machines are teaching themselves, it's a bit of a black box. Even the software engineers can't just jump in and go, found the problem, apply the code fix, and off we go. So we're relying on the inputs getting done right. We're relying on us not carrying our biases through into the technology that we're using. And as internal business people, any external tools or any internal tools our teams are creating, we're certainly relying on them to have done that work for us. The other one too is, you know what, sometimes the machines will be perfect. They'll get it right. But our own processes become the issue. Now, I fall back to recruitment because it's what I do, it's what I know. And many teams will have a recruitment process that bypasses the early stages for referrals or internal candidates. And that might be where our machines and their machine learning algorithms are taking place. And so we've bypassed the whole process, and we're bypassing the benefits that we're trying to bring into our organization through putting these candidates through a privileged process where the same judgments are not being made. So we do start to lose some big issues with bringing these machines in if we don't take careful consideration of what we're implementing and what we're asking it to do. The machines often can't tell us why they made a decision. It's that black box. We don't have that transparency. As humans, we have the ability to look at the data holistically and make an informed decision. Many machines have got a single task or a single focus, and they do that one thing. They may do that very well, but they can't take additional data into consideration. One of the big concerns, though, as we put more machines into play, is the idea that we might lose touch. I think most of us have probably heard the story of United Airlines last year where the doctor was removed from the flight. It certainly made headlines right across the globe. With that, United Airlines blamed the algorithm. Now, the algorithm was responsible for selecting the doctor as the person to remove from the flight. The algorithm was certainly not the one that caused all the actions that led to the PR disaster. But the people involved were the ones who implemented that, and then went back and blamed the algorithm for the actions that were taken. And I think that's one of the key things that we need to think about. I don't think it is humans versus machines. It's humans and machines, and one of the key things that we bring to the table is the idea that we can tell good and bad. A machine will come in, it will learn, and it will create a decision on its task, but it doesn't know if it's right or wrong. It doesn't know the rest of the context that we can get from a holistic view. And I think there's one final consideration that I just want to leave on is, I talked about cost before, and the idea that machines are coming into the workplaces more and more than they ever have before. And they will continue to do so. It's cost effective for business, it's smart business to do this. But as managers and as HR professionals, I think we also need to consider what are we doing to support the humans in our workplaces and in our towns and our cities to continue to have a career and continue to develop their skill set as this takes place. So we don't want to lose our own humanity in the process, pushing these people out while we replace them purely with machines. That's it for me today. If you do want to chat anymore, we're just right outside at the Indeed stand, and we'd love to have you come on board and have a chat with us. Thanks for your time.